Hey, Dr. Dan here. We are going to write a networked virtual reality inventory system today so you can store weapons or items or whatever for your game and spawn them into a network, use them, and see them as inventory in VR. And we'll deal with the challenges that face us when we work with that multiplayer virtual reality kind of environment. So I'm just starting here with a new project. Let's just call this networked VR inventory. And for this project, for this type of virtual reality networking, I'm going to use a new technique to network. Slightly easier, in my opinion, to sync up hands and a body than the animation syncing that I did in previous tutorials. But just to give you some options about how to currently network in Unity with virtual reality, we'll do it a different way. And all credit goes to a student of mine at the Games and Interactive Media and Mobile Technology GIM program at Boise State. Aaron Christensen came up with this solution, so I'm just going to go through it for you as well. And this is just another technique for networking in virtual reality and syncing things up. Alright, so we have an empty game project here. First thing I'm going to do is go ahead and get Unity integrations from the asset store. Oculus integration. And this is going to give us some plugins to set up virtual reality for XR settings for Unity. Just make things easier. At least one would think. Alright. So after this imports, it's probably going to ask me to restart Unity, because a new plugin likely has been made and detected by the good people at Oculus, so we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so here we go. Yes, we want to restart, and we'll let that do its thing. Okay, here we go. So we have a scene. First thing I'm going to add to the scene is a plane to walk upon. There we go. Let's go ahead and expand that out a little bit in the X and Z direction. Let's save this scene as something. I'll just call it net test, and let's add it to the build. Alright. Next, we're going to add a network manager, so let's just make an empty game object to hold it. And we'll add our network manager there. And we have one scene. Let's go ahead and just drag that offline and online scene into it. Next, in Oculus, under the VR prefabs, we're going to drag an OVR player controller right into our scene here. And that is all just fine. We're going to use that player controller as we load into the scene. Oculus is going to pick up that this is the player controller it needs to connect with for virtual reality. And then what we'll do is we will track these tracking spaces for our left hand and right hand and the OVR camera rig with a puppet. So the puppet will be our body, and a position of our body and hands in virtual reality will flow from this player controller to the puppet, which will be the physical, digital manifestation of us. Alright, so let's build a puppet here. So the first thing I'll do is just create an empty game object to hold it. We'll call it puppet. And let's add a capsule to be the body. And then let's add some hands in. And actually we can, while we're here, let's make a head. So that would be a sphere. That can be our head. And we'll need a left and a right hand. So let's just create empty objects for now for the left hand. And duplicate that and make a right hand. Alright. So the puppet is going to need a network transform and a network identity. So if I add network transform, it'll automatically give me a network identity. This transform should be local player authority, and we're going to need 3 network transformed children. 1, 2, 3. And these are going to be for the head. Actually, we need 4, don't we? So this will be to track the body, head, left hand, and right hand. All right, left hand and right hand. Let's go get some hands. So there's a great free asset at Oculus. Hand models, that's the one I want. Oculus has released their hand models that they've crafted themselves. You can download them, and once you get them, unzip it. I've already done that. So what I'll do is just pull up my downloads. And there's the hand models. I believe I actually unzipped to my documents here in Unity. There we go. So when you unzip it, you'll get a left hand and a right hand MB file, and you can just drag those into a project. And it'll take a second. It's a big import. And that's all we really need. If you take a look at these, we get these nice preloaded assets with animation controllers as well. So for the hands, you're going to see they're going to be quite big. Wow. So we'll have to scale those down a bit. Let's see, something like 0.01, 0.01, 0.01. Cool effect actually to have a giant hand that big just come into the scene. Alright, so there's our hands. They are fairly low, but that's okay. We're going to make them track something else. Alright, so the final piece here, not final, but just for the setup, we're going to add a script, and let's just call this puppet. Maybe network puppet. Loads. Let's open it up. Alright, and so this is going to be using Unity Engine networking. And we want this to be a network behavior. And we're actually going to have a private event from system action. Following action or whatever, and then we need to track our transforms here. So we'll need a lot of transforms. First, we need a transform for ourself. our body. A transform for our head. And the left and right hand. Okay. And then targets to track. We'll need to track the body target, the head target, and the left and right hand targets. Okay. On awake instead of start, let's say that our following action state will be following inactive, and we'll have to define a method for that event. So these are delegates from system.action, so methods that we can assign different methods to as we go dynamically. So for let's see, yeah, so if we're following inactive, we just want to return here. Right. So we'll make that delegate bounce back if we're not following anything. And otherwise, when we start the local player, so we will override on start local player. And this is a good way of like arranging things when a local player joins a network that you don't want to arrange before a player joins the network. So as each player joins the network, we want to go ahead and link up their the things that they're going to be following, these targets, with the things that are going to give us information about where everything in VR is moving. So over here in the OVR player controller, you can see that our left eye, our center eye anchor, our left hand anchor, and our right hand anchor are the things that are going to be moving around as we move the headset around and as we move the hands around in our Oculus controls. So we need to go find those so we can then track them. So what we'll do is we'll set body target equal to GameObject.find, and we'll just look for, since this is the body, our OVR player controller itself, and we'll set it to the transform. For the head target, we'll set that equal to GameObject.find, and we'll look for the center eye anchor. Very important to spell these right. I'm sure I'll spell one of them wrong. For the left hand target, we'll set that to GameObject.find, and here we want our left hand anchor .transform, and the right hand target, GameObject.find right hand anchor .transform. Transform. Okay. Then we'll start we'll make this delegate following action here fire off a following active. We'll set it equal to a following, initialize it to a following active method. So that we'll have to define. we can make this private. And here we want to set our puppet equal position, so the overall position equal to our body target position. We'll set our body position equal to our body target position. We'll set our head equal to the head target position. Oh, what happened there? Oh. Head position to the head target position. Our puppet left hand position. Oh, we need to set the rotation too. Puppet head. So unlike the body, the rotation of the head matters as well. I mean, I suppose that the rotation of the puppet head matters. Head target, I mean the body matters. Rotation equals left hand target dot position, puppet left hand rotation equals left hand target dot rotation, puppet right hand position equals right hand dot position, and puppet right hand rotation equals right hand target dot rotation. Okay. And I believe that is it. That is really all the code you need there. We can get rid of update. Oh, you know what? In update, we do need to do something. We will say following action dot invoke. So every time we'll call the delegate method that we've assigned to following action, which is this, right? Unless we haven't joined the game yet, and then we will be inactive, so we'll just return. Alright, so pretty cool solution here. Let's go ahead and test it out, and then we'll start adding our inventory system. So we have this OVR player controller, head, body. We need to hook up the Puppet script here for just a second. Alright, so we have all our network transforms set. Now we need, we don't need to worry about the targets. Those are going to find them themselves, but the body needs to be there. The head needs to be there. The left hand and the right hand. And finally, the puppet itself. Everything else will handle itself as we join the game. Alright, so let's save this puppet as a prefab in assets, and then we can delete it from the scene. And in Net Manager, we will, in spawn info, drag the puppet over, save, and let's just test this in virtual reality for a single player game. So there, put on a headset and make sure. Did we spawn a puppet? We have not yet spawned a puppet because we're not joined. Okay, so one more thing. Since we're just testing, it is appropriate to use a network manager HUD to just test the networking. We can always override this and write our own, as I've shown in previous tutorials. Alright, so let's join as a host. We did spawn a puppet. That's great. Let's see if it found the right transforms. It did, so you can see it's tracking those transforms. Let me grab some hands. There we go. Cool. And the hands are working. headset. I have two headsets, I get them confused sometimes. So I can put on this headset, and we're getting some shuddering here. Okay. So let's see what's going on with that. Let me reload this. Alright, so I've got hands, I've got body. Where is my location? I am falling. Alright. So let's see how to fix that. We can set this to initial setting of like 2. So we're kind of up a bit. And for the net manager, let's add a spawn point, which is about the same position. And we'll call that network. Network start position. And we'll make sure we start kind of up a bit. Alright. I'm flying. Okay, so I do have hands, though. That is good. Let's just fix the issue where I'm flying off the scene. Let's take a look at this puppet again. We had a lot of components here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the colliders off on these. I don't see any reason to have them. You can leave the left and right hand. The puppet itself has no collider. Okay. Let's try that again. Alright, so we're there and then we fly off the screen. That is okay. Let's apply this, delete that from the scene, test again. There we are. You can see the head is moving. It looks kind of odd, but that's okay. And in virtual reality now I can see my hands. I can move around. Very cool. Alright, so we are not done. We need to test this on a network. So to do that, let's go to File, Build Settings, and build this. And we'll call this Network Test. This is in Unity Network VR Inventory. Okay. So once we've built that, I will switch to webcam now. Hi everybody. And we'll go over to computer number 2. So over here, can you see? Yeah. Awesome. Let me get out of Oculus, and I will go look for that. I have these computers sharing a network, so I will go over to this computer and go to my documents. Unity, what do we call this? Network VR Inventory. Alright, so let's test this network out. Make sure the hands work as expected. I guess I can fire up over here. Switch back. We will run the scene, and we're going to join, I just happen to know this IP, the IP of my computer, my second computer, which is, don't tell anyone, that. Alright, and let's hold off on joining for just a second. I'll switch back here. Alright. So we have a VR game up and running. The second computer. Do have some hands. Alright. I can move around. So cool. So let's make sure that as the second one joins, we see different hands and a different body. So let's join as a client here. There we go. We have different hands. You can see that let's move this one around a bit. So you can see that these hands are moving without the other hands moving. And we've actually overridden the entire player controller as well. So let's switch back here. Alright, so there's the other body. You can see it. And okay. And as I move around, they do not, as you will see. I can move my hands around. Their hands are not moving. So, very cool stuff. Alright, let's see if we can get their hands involved here. Some hands. Kind of hard to test here. We can test with just the head. So you can see as I move the headset, their head is moving. There are the hands. You see they're kind of like up there. So you have to mess with the settings a bit to get the hands and the body and the head the way you want them to look. But that is the basics. Okay. So another solution to networking and getting hands and bodies synced up. Again, this solution is entirely a student of mine, Aaron Christensen, so all credit and glory goes to him for figuring it out. And I like this one because you have the OVR player controller, you don't have to mess with it at all, and the camera rig, and you don't have to just go straight to the XR settings the way that Oculus does and grab the input yourself. So you get a little less control over the way that you want to move around, but you get a nice player controller that different players can use. So if you want to use this kind of solution for networking in VR, go for it. Alright, so with this in place, now let's start writing an inventory system. Okay, so the first thing I want to do here is, well, let's rename this as start player position, so we know everything that's on the scene. Let's make some inventory items. So I'm just going to do some weapons. So I'll do a cylinder. Move that out a little bit so we don't spawn right on top of it. And let's scale this down to like 0.2. 1 is fine. 0.2. That's going to be our sword. So let's make a child object, which is a cube. And let's scale that Y down to like 0.3. And just drop it down. And boom, we have a sword. Alright, let's call this cylinder sword. Let's add a rigid body. And let's add a network transform, and it has a network identity. I'm going to uncheck gravity. I'll leave the capsule collider on, and I'll check is trigger. All right, so that is our first inventory item. We need to add a tag here. So we're going to use it in code. We'll call this inventory item and save it. And let's make sure that it tags as inventory item. And let's make a material so it stands out. I want this to be a lightsaber. What do you think, red? Of course. All right, so we can drag that over to that, and lightsabers have those at the bottom, don't they? There we go. Maybe 0.4. All right, we don't have to go crazy with this. Okay, so there's our sword. Yeah, we'll call it sword. Now let's drag it over to assets so that we have a prefab of it, and drop it down. All right, I'm going to duplicate this, pull it out to here, and this one I'll call axe. And let's reverse the colors. So let's just pull this off. And this cube up here. And let's make it extend in the Z. Maybe 3. 4. Yeah, that looks good. All right, right there. Again, we don't have to go nuts with this. And let's drag our material over to that. Oops. Oh, we reset the material. Oh. Messing with materials. Okay. Good enough. Oh, except I want the handle to be gray here. It's gonna bother me. Let's make another one and make it kind of, I don't know. Maybe like that color. Okay. Call it handle. Pull it there and there. Okay, there are our lightsaber thingies. Axe also needs to have a, oh, it has a rigid body, cool. No gravity, it is a trigger, and it's tagged as inventory item. Let's drag it over into assets, and now we have 2. And let's just make sure that these changes applied. All right. So, let me clear that error out. It's bugging me. All right, so we have an axe and a sword. The thing that is going to be local to the player is our puppet. So it is going to have the script that's going to govern our inventory. So everybody gets their own inventory is the idea here. So let's make a new script called inventory. And then on these, let's make a script called, we need a script to track the inventory state. So we'll make a new script called inventory state, and we'll put that both on the sword and the axe. And let's go ahead and apply that to our prefabs and to our puppet prefab. All right, let's do the inventory state script first so you can kind of see how this is, what my idea here is for that. So things in inventory can be uncollected, or they can be collected, so you have them in your inventory, or you can be viewing them, or you can equip them. So we need some way to track what state those things are in. So what I'm going to do is just make, outside of this class, a public enum called current state. So these are the current states I care about. Things can be equipped. They can be being viewed, and they can be not collected. So those are the states that we're interested in. And we'll need to know the current state. So we'll have a variable called current state, which will track this enum. We don't need a start or update here. We just need a getter and setter. So let's have a get state, and this is going to return a, this will return our current state, and it won't take any parameters. It'll just tell us what our current state is. Whoops. Okay. And then we need a way to set the state. So public void set state, and we'll pass in a current state. And we'll say our current state equals, let's just call this something different so we don't get confused here, equals the value that we pass in. Okay, so that's it. So let's save that, and then we've got Puppet Manager taken care of. We don't need to worry about that anymore. Let's go now to our script in Puppet called inventory. So a good data structure for inventory seems to me to be a dictionary. So the first thing, and that's because dictionaries have key value structure. In inventory, you're going to have an item, right? And then you have an amount of that item. So potions, weapons, whatever, money. So we need an amount and a type. So I think public dictionary is a good bet here. And for that dictionary, the key will be a string, the thing we ask how many of them we have, and then the amount will be an int. So that'll be our dictionary. We need a name for that. Let's call it inventory items. Good. Okay, and then in start we can say inventory items equals new dictionary string int. Yeah. All right. There's a couple of things we'll need now. We'll need, let's see here. Let's do a reference to our currently equipped item, a reference to the sword, and the axe. So those are items that we've saved as prefab, so we can link those in case we need to spawn them. Let's have a transform for the spawn axe point, and a transform for the spawn sword point. I just have a feeling those are going to be a little different. And let's see, we'll need a boolean to tell us if we have equipped an item, so item equipped, and a boolean to tell us if we are showing our inventory. So inventory shown. So if we want to see our inventory in VR, I think probably the best thing to do that occurs to me is, so it's in VR, popping up a menu doesn't seem real suited to that kind of environment, but popping up the actual items and then just letting you grab them seems like a better solution. So that's what we'll do. Our inventory system will just spawn these items, and then allow ourselves to equip them. So in start, we want to say our inventory is shown. It's not going to be shown on start, so we'll set that to false, and we won't start with anything equipped either. So item equipped equals false. All right, in update, let's tap into our OVR input here. So OVR input dot get dot OVR input button 1. So if we detect, let's just check that out, that we've pressed that, first of all, let's log it. And let's have another button we can press. 2. All right. So if that happens, then we can ask if we do not have our inventory shown. So we'll only want to show our inventory once. Let's call a method called show inventory. And if we press this, we'll say if our inventory is shown, let's call a method called hide inventory. All right, so now we need to define those two methods. That's all I'm going to do in start. So let's do show inventory first, or that's all I'm going to do in update. So for show inventory, what we'll do for now is we'll say if we have an item equipped, we'll get rid of it. We'll say our inventory shown is true, and if we have anything equipped, we'll just go ahead and destroy it. We'll track the current thing we have equipped. Ooh, true. Okay, so we'll track anything we have equipped, and then we'll destroy it, and we'll re-equip it when we show, if we decide to. But when we're looking at the inventory, we don't want that weapon up in our face or that potion or whatever it is. All right, so now we'll do a for each string s in our inventory items. So we'll go through our dictionary, go through all the keys, and we'll say show s. Show item s. And then we'll define another method that actually does that. Public void show item string s. And for this one, for now, we can hard code in some checks here. So if our name here equals sword, then we will make a clone of that and instantiate it. So sword, remember, is a reference to a prefab of a sword that we have stored in the hierarchy. We'll put that in at our transform position plus a new vector 3, which will be -0.5f. So something kind of in front of us to the right, to the left. And then we'll put it at our quaternion.identity, so normal transform. Okay. That's not good. Let's So we'll do that, and then what we want to do to our sword clone that we've made is get its component that is inventory state and set state, and set that state to current state dot equipped. So we know that this is a current state dot viewed. So we know that this is a viewed item. It's not yet equipped. Yeah. And then we can say else if s equals our axe. And like I said, we'll hard code this for now. I'll show you a way to do this. It's easier, so you don't have to check for every single name to spawn a bunch of inventory to look at them. But what we're going to do is actually the same thing here. So I'll just copy that over, except this will be an axe clone. Axe clone. And we will instantiate our axe. And we'll make it a little bit further over to our right. So we'll say 0 instead of -0.5. So it's a little bit out of the way. Alright, so we only have 2 types of inventory so far. But let's put in something for everything else. So if we make some more inventory for now, let's just say inventory of type plus s plus we have this many plus inventory items at s. So that's a dictionary, so we can just grab the amount by looking at the key there. So if we don't have an axe or a sword in the inventory, we'll make another one just to test that out. We will go ahead and just log it later on. I'll show you how to handle that so that you can spawn a bunch of inventory without having to know in advance what type of inventory it is and hard code it like this. All right, now we need to handle hiding the inventory, which is a bit easier. What we'll do is make a public game object array called inventory item. We already have one. It's called inventory I. And we can set that equal to game object dot find objects with tag. So we'll just look through the entire game, find all the inventory items in the scene, because they're all going to be tagged with that. Store them in this game object. Public there. Okay. So, and when we're hiding the inventory, we need to say our inventory shown is false. Now, we'll go through each of the game objects in inventory objects, and we'll ask if our state here, so go dot get components inventory state dot get state dot get state equals current state dot viewed. So if they are viewed, then we destroy them. Okay. Otherwise we leave them alone because they're either equipped or they're uncollected. And that's all we'll do to hide the inventory. Alright, so now we need to handle like getting the inventory in the first place. So what we want is on trigger. Ooh, come on now. On really wants to do an animation there. There we go. On trigger, enter. And let's go ahead, and I always like to just log what we're colliding with. So collision with plus other name. And then let's ask if the other dot game object dot tag, if that equals an inventory, oops, lowercase, we need a string here, inventory item, that's the one we care about. And we also want to know if our if we can get the inventory state from that. So if that does not equal, otherwise we might be like in transition. So we'll just check for that. That last and isn't really necessary, but just in case, we'll go ahead and grab the inventory state equals other game object get component inventory state, and need a name for that, and then we'll get the current state equals iState dot this is already a state, right? So we can just say get state. Okay. And we'll say if our current state equals current state dot viewed, then so we're viewing it, then we might want to equip it, right? So let's say if other dot game object dot name is, and because this is a clone, when we spawn it, its name is going to be axe clone if it's an axe, and sword clone if it's a if it's a sword. So if that's true and we don't already have an item equipped, so not item equipped, then we'll go ahead and equip it. And the way we'll equip that is we'll say game object axe clone equals instantiate, and here we're just going to instantiate our axe again, but we'll put it at the axe spawn, or spawn axe location. So that'll parent it, hopefully. We might need to maybe explicit parent this to the transform, but I think it'll do it automatically. And then we'll set our axe clone inventory state. That current state. Oh, we can just set it to current state dot equipped. Yeah, because it'll be equipped now. We'll set item equipped to true. This is like we're viewing the item and then we want to equip it. And then we'll set our current equipped equal. So we have a handle on this to our axe clone. Because remember, when we show the inventory, we destroy the current equipped. So we'll set item equipped as true, and then we'll just hide the inventory once we've equipped everything. Alright, I'm going to grab that whole block of code and paste it here, and we'll do the same, but we'll make it sword clone. We'll call this one sword clone, and we're going to instantiate the sword at the spawn sword location. Sword clone will be that. Again, we'll set everything. We'll set item equipped to true. We'll set our current equipped to sword clone, and then we'll hide the inventory. Else, we'll just for now debug log some other inventory needs to be handled plus it is called plus game object dot plus other dot game object dot name. So when we have other inventory items, we'll handle that differently down here. For now, let's just get the sword and the axe working. All right, so that's if we're viewing it. Now, that's if our current state is viewed. So let's scroll down to the bottom of that, and here we can say if our current state equals current state dot uncollected, we're going to handle things a little differently here. So now we want to actually collect the inventory items. So let's say if first we need to check if we already have it. So if our inventory items, this is our dictionary, right, contains key, other game object name. If we contain that key, then we want to go ahead and check if it's just add to it, right? We just want to add to the amount. So we just want to do inventory items at, so we have the key, at other game object name, and we'll just increment it once. So we'll say, let's add one more to that. Otherwise we don't have it. So else, we're going to add it. Remember, this has to be an inventory item, that potential inventory item, just by being tagged with inventory item before this whole on collision check gets run. So we know we already have something that might belong in inventory. So we can just say inventory items dot add, and then we want our game object, our collision, other dot game object dot name, and we're just going to add 1. Okay. And then finally, either way, once we collect it, we want to destroy it. So we'll add it to our dictionary, but we'll destroy it from the scene. So we'll track that we still have it, but we won't actually see it. Okay. All right. And before we test this out, let's just add one more method, which will be remove inventory. We're not actually going to use this yet, but say we pass in a name. This is just how to remove inventory, so you want to just take some down. So you'll probably have to handle this at some point, like as you use potions or whatever. So if our inventory items dot contains key iname, there we go. If that's true, we need to check if we're at if we're less than or equal to 1. If we have less than iname, put our key in, right? And ask how many of this do we have. If it's 1 or less, shouldn't be less, but if it's 1, what we want to do is remove it. So then we just say inventory item dot remove, and we pass in the key. If we have more than 1, let's do an else if. Else if inventory items at iname is greater than 1, then we just want to decrement it by 1. We want to take 1 away from how many we have. Then we say inventory items at iname minus minus. That's it. That's how we remove things from our dictionary when we need to do that. Like I said, we're not going to do that yet, but that is definitely something you'll need to handle at some point. So we have adding things to a dictionary, removing things from a dictionary. So let's go ahead and test our instantiation in our menu at this point. I imagine there'll be a few difficulties. So in Puppet now, let's go ahead and link up these parts. So our current equipped, we don't need to worry about. The sword, let's link to that. Prefab, the axe, let's link to this prefab. The spawn axe needs to be a position. So we have this hand. Let's add an empty game object here and just call this spawn axe. So we'll spawn an axe to the left hand and a sword to the right hand when we want to spawn it, just to test out the difference. And so we need a reference to those 2 points now. And just to warn you, it's probably not going to look great, but that's okay. So there we go. Spawn axe, spawn sword. Okay. So we'll test that locally. We haven't made those. We're not at this point doing network.destroy, but we will need to, when we spawn and destroy things, make these network spawnable objects and use a network.spawn, network.destroy. For now, we're just going to test locally and make sure the inventory system works, and then I'll show you how to make it work for a network. So let me put my headset on here. All right, and we have some stuff we can collect, hopefully. Let's see. So we're not able to collect it yet. That's okay. Let's see what's going on here. So one thing we need to do is apply this to the puppet. The left hand and right hand are going to need capsule colliders. Well, actually, let's just put a collider on the puppet, since it's the thing with the collision. But these could very easily be put on the hands. And let's make sure we don't fall through the floor now. Okay, it did. Let's add a rigid body. Take off gravity. And apply. Let's run it. Hands are gone. Alright, so we need to now apply that, delete this from the scene, run it, so we spawn in. There we are. There are my hands. Let's go and collide with these things. Alright, we're not quite colliding. So let's see what's going on here. We have a capsule collider with trigger, a rigid body with gravity. Let's bump the height up to 2 and the radius to 1. Let's see if we can't collide with these. Okay. So I can see my capsule colliders going through them. Now let's look at our console. We're not getting any collisions. So the sword has a capsule collider with a trigger and a rigid body. So does the axe. They are both tagged as inventory items. And the puppet has a inventory item script. Interesting. Alright. Yet we are not colliding. Let's go to the code. And let's see here. So in our on collision, on trigger enter, we have triggers, and we are logging what we collide with. Right. Let's drag our puppet back on the scene. Let's put the center at, I can see the problem, it's like too low, at 2, and then let's apply that and run it. Oops, forgot to delete from the scene. Delete from the scene, run it. Alright, now let's go collide with some stuff. Interesting. Still not getting anything. You can see the colliders overlapping. These have rigid bodies, they have capsule colliders, they are triggered. Inventory item. Must be something in the code. So we're not getting anything on the console. Okay, so let's look at these items. So everything about the puppet and the items looks right. I don't think it's the capsule collider's height or radius, so I'm just gonna make that back down something normal. The center is fine, I guess. So if you notice, the current state by default is equipped on these. We want them to be uncollected. And I believe that is what is causing the issue. So let's test it out now. So if we start as a host, and there's our puppet, put on the headset, I'll run over to these things, let my collider interact with them, and I pick them up. Cool. Alright, so now if I look at this puppet clone, I left the other puppet in our inventory, we have neither item equipped nor an inventory shown, so I'm going to go ahead and push the show inventory button, which is that. Oh, okay. So, we actually did equip an axe. You can see it floating around back there. There's a bit of a problem though. We spawn a bunch of these axes and swords every single time we push the button, and the hide button is throwing an error. So a couple things to fix here. First of all, we have a tag wrong, it looked like, when we hide the inventory. So that needs to be inventory item. And that'll fix the hide. The second is when we grab our input, see if we have a get button down. Oh, alright, that's fine. What about OBR input dot? Oh, alright, so that's the way we have to do that. If our inventory is not shown, we show inventory. If it is shown, we hide inventory. When we show inventory, we set that to true. So after we push the button once, we should not get... the problem is that we can push that many times. We can push that once and hold it, and it keeps on spawning. So... okay, so we need to show the inventory once, and what happens is we get lost in this method when we show inventory, and really we want to set this down here. We'll set that to true down here after we show the items once, and then return, so we are sure we break out. And here we'll check if we have not inventory shown. Actually, we can just do this at the top instead of checking for everything. So let's say if not inventory shown, go ahead and run through this whole loop once. The other thing is we're immediately selecting the axe. So that tells me that, and that's probably because we made the colliders so big. But one thing I want to do is when we show these axes, let's go ahead and spawn them like far in front of us. So we'll set the z-axis to 3 for the axe and the swords. They're pretty far in front of us when they spawn. Let's switch back to Unity, and now let's set these colliders. See if we can just reset them to their normal state. And the puppet collider, we can also reset that. Alright, because the problem wasn't the collider, it was that these were not tagged. These were not, their current state wasn't set to uncollected. So let's test that out. Alright, be a host. And there are the swords and axes. Let's go get them. 1, 2. Alright. And then with button 1, oh, there's the other puppet. Button 1, I should be able to spawn these. Ah, there we go. You spawn them once, and then if I collide with one of them, did I get an axe? I did. Okay, so you can see it in the game view. But the transform's all off. It's not actually appearing on my screen. Oh yeah, it is. It's just kind of way out there. But you can see it's roughly following my right hand. So it is connected. That's my right hand. That's the sword. It's just kind of floating up there. So we need to pull those together. Alright, so let's do that. Right here in the editor. Let me zoom out a bit. And let's find the right hand transform. And there is, in the right hand, a spawn sword transform. You'll notice that it is like floating off in a direction. So really we don't want its capsule collider active here. So we'll take that off once we spawn it. And for the sword clone spawn point, we really want to pull that in. So let's go ahead and first in code we'll disable the after we instantiate it, so not viewed, but when we actually select it, so on collision enter, trigger enter, so we did not need to explicitly parent that, it worked. But one thing we're going to want to do is get its collider. Was it a capsule collider? Let's set that to false. Let's just check that it does have a capsule. Yeah, they both have capsule colliders. Let's set that to false. You know what, and we can go ahead and explicitly parent that. So let's say axe clone dot set parent game object dot set transform.setParent. Yeah. And let's set that to our spawn ax point. Okay, and let's copy these 2 lines of code here and paste them down here. Except this will be sword. Sword clone. Alright. That should take care of the floaty problem. The spinny, floaty, equipped problem. Let's test that out now. So I'm going to go collide with them. Boom, boom. Get them both? Yeah. Alright, button 1. Where'd they go? There they are. Alright. Let's see if we can get the axe this time. Collide with that first. Okay, so there it is. It is in my left hand. There's my left hand. There's the axe. They are very far away from each other in virtual reality. So let's pull them closer. So let's look at the puppet clone, left hand, and spawn axe. Left hand is there at 0, 0, spawn axe is there at 0, 0. I think it's because the left hand scale is so large. So let's just pull this transform over and down. That's kind of in my hand. Let's see how that looks in virtual reality. Alright, so still pretty far away. So let's pull it a bit more close. Get a good angle here. See where the hand is. Alright, so it is floating again. That's not good. Capsule collider is not responsible for that. I think some of these might have colliders in them that are throwing this off. Alright, well, you get the idea. So this needs some adjustment, obviously. The left hand is following the axe clone. So let's just grab that position that was relatively close, and on our puppet now, and our left hand spawn axe position. Let's go ahead and paste those component values. And save. And for the right hand, we can use the same component values for that too. It'll be a little different, but so this part will take some tweaking. Let's apply that. What I want to get is the parenting of the transform and the inventory system working. Alright, so we can grab them. Why can't we get that one? It is uncollected. Capsule collider. There we go. Alright, that is now... So let's go ahead and change that. We need the capsule collider of our puppet to be about 1, it looks like. Okay, we can apply that. Let's delete this from the scene, run it. Man, virtual reality testing, so much fun. Alright, so there we go. Let's make them pop up, and let's go get the axe. There we go, that looks good. Chopping with me. It is floating up though, I have no idea why. That is bizarre. Huh, okay. So, for that, perhaps it would be a good idea to, because it's still there. What if we use gravity? No. It's not gonna work. Is kinematic perhaps? So one thing we could do here is look at our puppet script and map the axis position to our puppet's position. So that should already be mapped, so let's put on is kinematic on both of these and see if we can and apply it. See if we can get that floating to stop. Did I parent anything? I did. Okay. Well, that's kind of good. It is not floating. We have stopped the floating. That time we parented the sword because I interacted with that first. So in this puppet clone, we have in our left hand a spawn axe. And that is because it should spawn to that transform. That's kind of weird. Okay, but let's go ahead and see what the sword is doing. So it's spawning to the wrong position, but because it's kinematic now, it's not bouncing around the way it was. So let's see why it's spawning to the wrong position. So I believe that'll be in our inventory script. So if we don't have an item equipped, this will be in our on collision enter. If we don't have an item equipped and we've got a sword, we want to spawn it to the spawn sword location. Okay. And that's the spawn axe location. Let's make sure those are hooked up right in the inventory, in the puppet. So in our puppet script, we have spawn axe and spawn sword to the right hand. Okay, that's good. Let's run it and test it again, see what's going on. Pick them both up. go. I think because I'm not network spawning, it's a bit problematic. Alright, so there's the axe. Cool. We'll have to space them out a bit. Let's see what we can do with this transform to make it a little more believable. So I'm going to open up the puppet, the right hand, and the left hand. We've got the spawn axe. I'm going to lift that transform up a bit, pull it forward a bit. Forward a bit more, it looks like. No, that was too far. There. Let's bring up this game view so we can kind of see. And let's see where that hand is. Okay. So these need to be tracking each other. So I'm going to turn off the mesh on this so I can see the hands a little better, and I'll turn off the mesh on the head as well. Alright, let's pull this down. Let's take a look at that hand. So there's the left hand, and the spawn axe is tracking it perfectly, but we need to adjust its position so it's like right on top of the hand. So let me grab that, pull it over, pull it in, down. So. Alright. It is not quite where we want it here. Alright, so let's pull that. Whoops. Yikes. This whole object needs to go over. Where is it? Alright, so down and to the right now. There we go. So it's kind of a getting things just right in virtual reality is a process. I need to pull that now towards me a bit more. Maybe a bit more this way. And, okay, now more towards me. Yep. Now up. And kind of over a bit to the right. There we go. And then let's like rotate it down. Axes kind of face down, don't they? Alright, and so there you have it. So now we can just get that spawn axe transform and rotation. Oh, is it the axe itself we were moving? Whoops. So, we can copy this, paste them there, zero this out, and let's, the spawn axe point is the one that we really want to be interested in. So this one can come down for there, down, and we need to pull back towards me and over a bit towards me more. Yeah, maybe forward away from me. Alright, there we go. So, close enough. So now if I copy those values, stop it, and in the spawn axe, paste those values. We have a nice rotation that'll suit the axe now when we spawn it. So let's test out the inventory now that we have things kind of figured out with the transform points. Of course, you can animate the hands so they close over the axe and stuff like that. So let's grab them both, spawn them. Alright, let's test the hide inventory. So there, make it go away, make it come back, make it go away, make it come back. Cool. I grab the one that I want, I get the axe. We still have to mess with that transform rate a bit. Looks like it needs to be just higher. Whoops, not that. Puppet clone, left hand, spawn axe. Just needs to be higher. And over and forward. Copy component. Other than that, it's pretty good. Chop, 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 chop. Okay. Let's stop. And then puppet. Spawn axe. Alright. Let's save that. Actually, apply, run it. Test this out one more time. Alright, let's go get them. Let's make them appear. One. Boom. Got the axe. Yeah. Suitably close to my hand. It's actually in my hand. So cool. Alright, now if I want to see the inventory again, I can push that, my axe disappears. And let's try the sword. The sword's going to be in a weird position, so grab that first. We can add these colliders any way we want, and there is a sword, but again it's in a weird position. So let's see where that sword went. We can fix that real quick. Should be, so it actually went to the spawn axe position. It's very bizarre. We really want is it to go to the spawn sword position. Why is it going there? We have a spawn axe and a spawn sword for the right hand. For spawn axe, let's copy these position values and paste them onto spawn sword. And then let's just make sure that our puppet, what are we doing here to spawn it to the same position? So when we collide with a inventory item that is called sword clone, we instantiate it here. Because we set the parent to spawn axe. We want to set it to spawn sword. There we go. Alright. One more test. There's our inventory. Let's go get it. Let's make it appear. Let's grab the sword this time. And somewhere behind me, it seems, that sword has spawned in the right place this time. Let's fix that transform rate. That transform position so it's closer to the hand. So again, I'm going to turn off the mesh on the head and body so I can see the hand. And let's put that spawn sword position into the scene. Where is it? Goodness. here's the right hand. And there's spawn sword. We need to bring them together. There we go. It needs to be down and rotated. So let's pull that down there. And rotate it. It's actually flat, so 90 degrees. Nope. No. Let's just take a look here. Like that. Okay. Getting closer. Let's pull that in. Pull it over. Close through the knee. Pull it close. Alright, there we have it. Close enough. So it is now roughly where the hand is. I'll let you set the rest yourself. I'm just gonna copy those component values, stop, and in spawn sword I will paste those component values and save. And then let's apply. We can remove puppet from the scene. Alright, so that's a basic inventory system. We can add as many inventory items as we want. In the next tutorial, what I'll do is we'll make these networked inventory. So instead of destroying and spawning it, we'll do network spawn and network destroy. And we'll add a inventory manager that can then handle other inventory items other than the ones we've preloaded, spawning them in and doing things with them. But for now, this was a lot. The video went a little bit long, but another way to set up networked virtual reality behavior and a way to have inventory items handled by a dictionary and then appearing in VR and able to manipulate them. Okay, thank you for watching. As I said, the next one will make the inventory items as well as the interactivity networked behavior, and we'll handle all kinds of different inventory items, even ones that we haven't got preloaded into the scene. Thank you so much.